wonderful.
I'm Realtor Victor Naraki with one of my buyers, Darlene, and she just bought a house near Disney World. And now she can go on the Jungle Cruise anytime she wants, 100 times a year. Same jokes, but 100 times a year. Hey, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. We've got 12 people watching already, and we're going to get right into it. We are talking today with a title company, and I am glad we're doing this because it's one of the avenues in this in real estate that I have the least control over. So I want to learn as much about it as possible, and we're going to do that today. And my guest today is the manager of Meets and Bounds, and it is Susan Walker. Hello.
Hey, that was a fun video.
It's a little long, I know, but I like it gives people time to join. So
absolutely, I'll make one for myself next time.
So yeah, we've already got 12 people watching, but
Nice.
over time there'll be a lot of repeat viewers. So we're going to get right into it, and I'm going to give my little introduction of what a title company is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. But really, the title company is a interested third party, not disinterested, but interested third party that makes sure that both sides fairly close the sale of the home so that ownership is properly transferred to the new owner.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in other states, they use lawyers because they're a lien state, but because we are a title state, we use title companies, which I have to say, when I hear from people who come from New Jersey, New York, how long it takes to close on a house, it's pretty. I'm embarrassed for them because we do not go through that type of stuff. So, so
you want to start there?
Yeah, why don't we?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to elaborate on that a little bit about the difference between attorney state and title state. So, obviously, some states require attorneys only to close transactions. In Florida, title companies are allowed to conduct those real estate transactions. And what's really specific about title companies is that's what they specialize in, is title. So they don't specialize in other areas of real estate, which makes them, in some cases, become fluent in just title work, right? So having the ability to close on property, and that's our only primary focus, at least for us, it allows us to really broaden our knowledge on all facets of title issues that arise in our industry. So title companies can very quickly become experts in the industry.
And you know what? I find that when I'm working with a title company that isn't fluent and it doesn't have really good follow through, the dangers of closing late, or I wouldn't say you're not going to close, but there are so many times where I'm going, why didn't you do this already?
Sure.
And I have no control over it. And that's why we decided to go with you, because we just felt that you were more on top of it than other title companies are. And now the seller is the one that actually pays for the majority of your services, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so we don't have too much control, but the more I can do this, the more I can, we can always suggest title companies that they could work with. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
So let's go to
Absolutely.
some of those things that we were going to discuss today.
Sure.
The first thing is, this came up recently. I had a gentleman who was very thorough, and he said, well, if they're buying title insurance, I want to buy my own title insurance too. And I was like, you don't need to do that.
Right.
But here it is. This is the question. What is title insurance, and is it a one-time fee or annual fee? I know the answer to that, but I'll tell you. Here go.
Yeah, it's a one-time fee. So that's a simple answer. It's not year after year. There's no renewal on it for the life of the loan, or for the life of the loan, for the life of the time you own the property.
Sure.
You have title insurance. So title insurance protects your rights to the property like it's title. It's exactly what it says. So as homeowners insurance protects your home, title insurance protects the title rights from prior sellers, prior heirs, prior liens, prior anything that could go wrong with the property up until the point that you owned it. In a nutshell.
I always think the people that sell this insurance are the ones that make the most money in this industry. Because it's any forbid, a query or about an attack on the title insurance, like somebody coming. Have you ever dealt with that, where somebody said, "No, we have the title to this," 2 years later?
So we've never specifically.
See, that's where they make the money. Then
I know, but here's the deal. So in our industry, there are lots of title claims, but that comes from sloppy title work, right? It comes from lack of the due diligence of performance. So in our company, I've been doing it for 18 years, and we turn over every stone. So there is no stone left unturned. We make sure that we have marketable title, that we have, there's nothing that could possibly come back unless something was unrecorded that we did not have knowledge of. Mm-hmm. So insurance is just that though, right? So you have to have it for security purposes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sloppy title out there. If you look at the statistics in our industry, title claims are relatively on the high side. Just because we don't have title claims doesn't mean they're not out there.
Because you're doing your job right.
That's right.
Well, I know, because you have to check. The first thing you guys check is for, liens on the property, and you're checking to make sure. So I always get this I used to get this a lot when I was selling nothing but foreclosures. Mm-hmm. When I first started, all I was selling was foreclosures. And that was really, really, it just seemed like it was really difficult to make sure the title was completely clean. Now, of course, we don't have any foreclosures, so we don't get those. But you go and you search, you do a lien search. You also make sure that the survey is correct. Mm-hmm. What other things do you have to perform before the closing of the property?
We make sure that there's no municipality liens, so water liens, any kind of code enforcement, mm-hmm. Liens that might be out there, personal judgment liens, like credit cards, solar panels, any kind of instrument that might be attached to the property, mm-hmm. child support, IRS liens, all different sorts of things. Notice of commencements. We search for open permits while we don't insure over open, like any kind of permitting. We still search for it, because if there's an open permit, a lot of times the seller is unaware. They hired a contractor to perform some work for them. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking the contractor is going to close out the permit. And
yep.
it doesn't
I've
happen,
encountered
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen. So, in our company, we like to look at the permit because we want all parties to know. We have had people in the past come back. This was many years ago and say, hey, there was an open permit you didn't tell us about. This was before we started searching for permits.
Yeah.
And even though we still don't insure over them and we're not liable for them now, and it's been this way for about 12 years in our company, we search every city and county ordinance for open and voided and void or nulled or expired permits to make sure that they're closed out before closing.
Well, when I bought my my foreclosed property, it was weird because there was a lien on the property, but it was a foreclosure, and there was a lien on it, and they said, "Well, we can't find out what the value is. So you're just going to have to sign this that you agree," which I would never allow my customer to do. That you're gonna pay it when we find out what it is, and it could have been anything. You know how much it was? $20.
Wow.
And that's what they almost walked away from the sale for. But anyway, that's my story. So we did cover this. Florida is a title state, but maybe if you could explain a little bit more about that.
Basically, there are just no legal requirements that you have to hire an attorney to do a closing in the state of Florida. So in the state of Florida, you do have to have a state licensed title agent that runs the office, and then closings can be conducted underneath that licensed agent.
Mm-hmm.
And our title company, all of our closers are licensed. Even if there's 4 in one office, every closer that steps foot into a closing room is state licensed.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Do you throw notaries in the room at the closing?
Not in only if they're out of state or out of our vicinity. So if they are in our office, they are licensed titled closers.
Drives me crazy because
I've never quite understood that, because if you're a realtor and you're licensed and you come into the closing room and you're representing your buyers and sellers, I've never understood why companies don't enforce just in their own policy. It's not enforceable by law, but just in the own company, that if you're licensed and you're representing, why shouldn't the closer also have skin in the game and be licensed?
Exactly. And the problem is that I encounter is that they can't answer any of the questions.
Yeah. We pride ourselves on that. Absolutely pride ourselves, because we have 8 title licensed closers.
Good.
And they're all educated.
So here's another question. What's the difference between an owner's policy and a lender's policy? And I really want to hear this.
Yeah, it's actually quite simple. It's exactly what it says. So the lender's policy is title insurance that protects the lender. It does not protect the borrower. It protects the lender should an error come back or a lien from a prior seller, the same thing that title insurance is about.
Who pays for that? Who pays for that?
The borrower, the buyer pays for
borrower.
The lender's title insurance is paid for by the buyer.
Okay.
Okay. So it is insurance that protects you against any kind of title issues that arose before you purchase the property.
Okay.
Okay. So that protects the lender. Owner's policy is just that. It protects the new owner.
Mm-hmm.
So should the same issues arise that a lender's policy would protect a lender for, it would also protect an owner for.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the next question. If anybody has any questions. Oh, wait, we got something here. Oh, no. Yep. So the term promulgated rate, what does that mean?
So promulgated rate means that these are insurance rates set by the state. So title insurance companies can't go and set their own rates for title insurance. Across the board, all title companies charge the same promulgated insurance rate for owners' policies and lenders' policies.
Okay. So that is interesting, because I did not know that. So learn something new.
There may be the only variations that a title company has are for endorsements or simultaneous policies.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a difference in those charges, but when you're purchasing owner's title insurance or full value lender's title insurance, those are promulgated rates, meaning they're just set. There's no variation.
Okay. I've got next question is a really important one for me. What makes a good title company?
We do. Oh, that's funny. So, okay, like in real estate, what's real estate 101? Location, location, location,
Mm-hmm.
right? And title, to me, it's communication, communication, communication.
Tell me about it.
It's receiving the contract within the first day, starting that open conversation, having the title commitment 3 to 5 days later, also having that open conversation. Let's talk about what came up with title issues, if there are any, and let's start the ball rolling instead of waiting until the 11th hour and having this issue pop up at the last minute.
You see, when we first met, this was the first thing I said to you. And I cannot understand when I'm dealing with, and I'm not paying the title company because I'm representing the buyer.
Sure.
So I really don't know this title company. And I'm like, I'm literally forcing them to call my buyer and introduce themselves 2 weeks into the sale. And they haven't, because they don't feel the need to. And then we find out that the buyer is going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. And it's like,
yeah,
you needed to order the estoppel. You needed to start the work, and you haven't even talked to them about what to expect. It makes me crazy. And like, they'll call me and they'll say, oh, are these people coming in to close, or are we doing a mail away? And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
3 days before? It just drives me
So
insane.
That's the thing. It's customer service, right? So in the title business, whether you're closing with an attorney, whether you're closing with a title company, we all use the same mutual underwriters, right? So an attorney, if they write on Chicago Title, we write on Chicago Title. If someone writes on Fidelity National, we write on Fidelity National. So it's, at the end of the day, the product is the same as far as what attorneys don't have a special company that they do their underwriting with any different than how we get the same opportunity to have that same product, right? So the product's the same. It's the experience, it's the delivery, and it's the celebration of it. So having to deal with a title company that has good quality customer service and educated closers, where you can call and you don't have to wait for someone to call you back. You actually could ask the person who answers the phone whatever issue question you have. That's the record, in my opinion.
And it sounds simple, but I will be I cannot believe how many times I've dealt with title companies. I had one title company that still irks me to this day, where I said they were paying cash, but we weren't quite sure what day they would close on. So they kept telling me, well, until we know the date, we're not going to give you a closing amount. And I'm like, no. We need to know an estimate. Well, we don't do estimates. And I'm like, then we're closing on Monday.
And if we
all right,
and
then we ended up closing on Wednesday. And they were like, your agent told me this was all right. And I'm like, they were horrible. And it's just, it is amazing to me how they use their power against you sometimes and say, well, you know what, we're in charge here. We're not listening to you. And it's, and here I am trying to make this deal go through, and the people not have an idea what they're going to be paying. It's crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
We have some questions that came in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Deborah, Who checks the property description for accuracy, and who's responsible for correcting any errors in description? Now,
Uh-huh.
the
Good
one
question.
that's online for the MLS, I would check with the selling agent. But the stuff that, like for example, I sold a house that was listed as 3 bedrooms, and it had 5 bedrooms. Now, would that come up with something that you would correct?
No, so we do not check against bedrooms, bathroom size of the house. That really falls back on the realtor. However, how I'm reading this is more on a property description, like what lot it's in, what subdivision, if it's a meets and bounds description, who's responsible for correcting those errors. And a lot of times, legal descriptions are taken off of the property records card, and those are abbreviated legal descriptions. So even they're hand typed as well. So, obviously there's room for human error. And you could develop missing calls. Missing calls means when there's a gap in the legal description that doesn't quite, close. And so there's a piece of it that's missing. So we do. A long and short answer of that is title companies are supposed to take the legal description from the deed, compare it to the commitment, and then compare that against the survey.
Okay. Okay. We got another question came in.
Okay.
Is that why people get an attorney to handle the title company and coordinate? Well, technically, I'm going to answer the first part of that. With my original broker, she said, if anybody asks you if you need an attorney, hand them an attorney's business card and walk away. That's why she's not my current broker. I think that's a terrible answer. And unfortunately, I've answered the question of do I need an attorney incorrectly. And because I think you need it when it comes to something like you're creating a trust, you're going to have dual ownership. You need things explained to you because we can't legally explain what's on the contract. We can only say, do you have any questions about it? And if they have any questions about it, then we try to solve it together. But I can't say this is what it means because I'm not an attorney. So what would you say to this? Is that why when would you use an attorney?
For the same thing, should a legal issue come up that needs representation? And here's what I would say about it's not that I think that you should use a company that's going to issue you marketable title that has a great reputation, whether it be an attorney or whether it be in a title company. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, again, going back to the whole underwriting issue, like we have attorneys in our underwriting and we issue the same policies.
Yes.
So, and I'll piggyback that with, if you were a buyer's agent and I was a listing agent, mm-hmm. and I wanted my client wanted an attorney that represented them, and they wanted them to do the closing, and it was not a mutual relationship between buyer, seller, and closing company, that attorney has a obligation to the seller to represent the seller, even though they close the buyer, or vice versa. They represent the buyer and they close the seller. With title companies, there is no representation. It is a mutual party who not even represents, but who makes sure on both sides that seller's giving marketable title and buyer's getting clean marketable title. Mm-hmm. So there's no conflict of interest or anything.
Okay. Now, Esther has a question. She's trying to research ownership of a property. The owner listed it last recorded deed has been deceased for 40 years. Can a title company help with this? Who would she go to if she was interested?
Absolutely. It's my most favorite thing to do. So
Hmm.
anything after 30 years is called abstract of title. And sometimes it requires somebody to go down actually to the county and look at old films of records,
Oh,
right? That are in
wow.
public
Okay.
record. So very interesting. I will, yes, absolutely. A title company can help anybody
I
with
think
any
Esther's going to
kind
be
of title
calling you.
issues. Yeah.
Okay, good, good.
There's a problem with that though, because it's been 40 years, finding the errors and locating if there was probate or who can sign on behalf of this person. I mean, obviously, you'd have to get somebody involved. If probate did need to happen, an attorney
Mhm.
would have to get involved in order to go and do that. Or I've known people to do their own probate. It just takes, good discipline to go and do that
Yeah.
at the courthouse.
Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a great one. What are some things that have delayed a closing or resulted in a failed deal?
Mm.
I'm sure you've got some stories.
Yeah, lots of them. Unknown liens. Seller didn't, when seller purchased the property, the prior owner's lien maybe wasn't satisfied, or it was satisfied, but the satisfaction wasn't of record. We talked about permits that have open notice of commencement that the seller didn't know about. Notice of
Mhm.
commencement is a lien that's placed on the property when someone starts any kind of repair, construction of the property. Defective deeds, that would be mostly where individuals or just sloppy title work are being performed on deeds
Mhm.
and marital statuses are missing with lack of homestead language. There could also be errors in legal descriptions. We talked about that with surveys. Deed is written a certain way and maybe it drops off a together with or an ingress or egress, or it drops off a mobile home title VIN number, something like that along the way. And so 3-4 ownership exchanges, certain information has been dropped off of a deed. That's an error. And it a lot of times it creates a cloud in title. So that's got to be corrected. Death of a person unknowingly, like in the middle of a transaction. So
I
there's,
had one person, the owner died the day of closing.
mm,
And
yeah.
it was, yeah, it was, but we closed. It was,
Well, they must have been like, so you can close on a death of a person as long as there is like a estate by the entirety where the other party has the ability to sell.
yes.
One of my favorite ones is probably divorce. And then when you get to the table, they're not really divorced, they're legally separated. So you're either divorced or you're not divorced. There's
So
no
if
in between.
someone is married, could they buy a house without the spouse knowing it, or sell a house without the spouse knowing it?
Only if it's an investment property.
Oh, really?
If it's their homestead, no, they cannot.
Oh,
I'm sure
okay.
they do, but homestead is protected in the state of Florida.
Okay. All right. And can you talk about claims?
Yes. So claim, we talked about this a little bit earlier when we said that title insurance is for the purposes of claims. So let's say that you have a prior seller who had an error that showed up. A lot of times people think that when they probate a property, it's the personal representative that has all the rights in the world. But if they had descendants or any kind of beneficiary that could have had a claim to the property, and that beneficiary finds out years later that that property was sold and they had a right to it, that can rise and that can create a claim.
Okay.
And we talked about unrecorded satisfactions that could also create a claim.
Okay. We have another question coming from Melissa and Neil. Does the title company handle the payoffs for both sides? I'm going to take this for a second. The answer is yes. But the thing is, what always holds up, I find that, we get in closing is when the lender hasn't funded the loan. And that's what I always say people need to be very, very patient on closing day if they have a loan involved. And one of the other things is I might as well, as long as I'm at it, do not schedule the movers for that day.
Unless
Do
it's a
not.
Friday and they want to move in on Saturday.
I know. Oh my God. Well, with my house, what happened was it did, I flew in because I did everything that now I tell my customers not to do. I flew in on a Friday to close, and I was staying in a hotel and thought I was going to be moving into the house. And we didn't close on Friday, and it was a long weekend. So we didn't close till Tuesday, and I had to pay for a hotel and all that kind of stuff, and it was truly truly a nightmare. But you cannot force a closing dates. The only thing my first broker said that I think is that I always remember as being pretty wise is that closing dates are estimates. They're not written in stone.
Yeah.
And you cannot plan around them. And if you do, it could cost you money. But does the title company handle the payoffs for both sides?
Absolutely. I have a funny story. We had closing just last week, 22 buyer payoffs. So let me just say, so at our company, we consider that part of the closing, right? But some title companies that I'm aware of will charge an additional fee to handle buyer payoffs.
Sure.
So these were checks that some were overnighted, some were not overnighted. There were no additional fees, but
I'm glad I don't have your job, because that would have made me nuts.
Well, that does happen, but yes, we do handle payoffs if the lender wants something paid off. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, well, I know it came up earlier, we were mentioning solar panels, and I recently had a customer that's selling their house with solar panels, and that is what I would say is highly recommended, that you pay it off at closing and just wipe it away, because it's very difficult to transfer that lien to somebody else.
It is. I have seen it done, but it is extremely difficult. Yeah, absolutely. Not as easy as termite bonds being transferred.
Well, it was funny, because everybody told me it was going to be very difficult on this one, and it turned out that it was actually very easy. They said, well, if you're buying the house cash, you must have the money. So they took the person's, but that was because they were buying the house cash.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of water softeners too. So people need to be more aware of, it's not just solar panels. It can be water softeners.
If you haven't paid them off.
Absolutely.
So there's a lien on your property. Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll go on to the next. If anybody has any questions, just ask. And we're already at how many minutes? Oh, geez, 35 minutes already. Okay, go a couple more minutes. There we go. What's the biggest challenge for title companies? This is a good question.
All right. Currently, the biggest challenge right now is absentee owners and wire fraud.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. Absentee owners.
Absentee owners. That is typically something that happens in vacated property.
Okay.
Either vacated property or vacant land. So people are just getting very savvy about looking and making. So what they do is they go on property records or on the tax records card. They look and see if the address is different than the property address. And if they realize that person doesn't live there. Then they make sure there's not a renter in there, if it's vacant land or whatever. And then they disguise themselves as that owner. So there was a really big wave of absentee owner fraud about probably 8 months ago, up until they're still going on.
And it's actually, I was doing this recently, trying to find absentee owners and to do a mailing. And there were a lot.
There are a lot.
I mean, I was, so yeah. So if you see they're in Virginia, and then they're maybe, it could.
Yeah. So that's a big challenge for us. Wire fraud as well. We're getting hackers and criminals are getting really technical, and their technology has increased. I think you might have heard it on the news recently about being able to voice disguise, someone's voice by a recording or whatever. That's not what we're dealing with currently, but we're dealing with email hacking. So
Yeah.
I might send you wire instructions and tell you to send your proceeds to me. And then somebody confiscated my email, changed the wording around, and sent the wire instructions to you that it looks like it's coming from me,
Yes.
but not the case. And so people have been wiring money to fraudulent people.
Because they hack your email or a
Mhm.
title company's email, and then send a fraudulent email requesting, the money that
Correct.
sounds like the money you're supposed to be asked for.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
Anybody's email can be, if they'll code word. So in our company, we normally do not put things in the subject line like proceeds or wire information, anything that would flag a hacker who's looking for words like that. And we also have encrypted emails that are secured on portals and things like that. So we're staying ahead of it. However, it's out there and it is happening all the time.
I thank goodness it's never happened to my customers, because I always tell them to make a phone call to the title company, and that's why it's so important to create that relationship right away.
Yeah,
So that you're talking to somebody and say, okay, and now I'm going to call you right before, I wire the funds,
just
and make sure
verify.
it's the same bank and the same account number. If it's different, it needs to be explained to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Alyssa and Neil are saying that some solar companies lie about that when they try to sell you the panels. About transfer of ownership. Yeah, I would say I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I knew what was going on, so I said, I'm not buying solar panels until I can pay them off right away.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I did. So anyway, now next question is, well, we just covered that. What can you
Yeah.
explain wire fraud? But yeah, I think we did it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just
Okay.
educate your people. That's all I can say is, like, if you're out there wiring money around,
Mm-hmm.
just make sure that you verify instructions, you've talked to somebody, and the emails look the same. A lot of times, if you hover over an email that looks like Susan Walker, but if you hover over it, it might say Susan Avatar Walker, or it
Mm-hmm.
might say Susan missing an N Walker or something like that. So that's the best way to tell if you have, some spammers in your email
Okay.
trying to disguise themselves.
Our last banner is, can you talk about your biggest title challenge and how you got the deal done?
Oh my God, there's so many of them.
Well, we got a little time.
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about. It's a legal probably thing, because that tends to be what is most challenging. But people who think that their children, so I have one that it's a ladybird deed. I don't know if you know what that is, but
No,
a
what is that?
ladybird
I've heard the
deed.
expression, but I don't remember what it is again.
Okay, so a ladybird deed keeps the owner in title, and they have all the rights to convey, but upon their passing, they'll pass the property over to their heirs,
Yes.
whoever the beneficiaries are. So we had this one where the son thought he could sell the property because his mother was in a nursing home and she was incapacitated. That's a huge hurdle for us. If somebody is known to be incapacitated, or even if we feel like they are, we have an alert for people not to take advantage of that kind of situation. And the state requires it as well. So you have to have, like, doctors declare them to be incapacitated. You have to have power of attorneys put in place. You have to have courts do guardian ad litems or put somebody that has the ability to perform for them. So incapacitation is a really difficult challenge for us. So
So,
just, yeah.
yeah, is that the time that you would say that they should have created a revocable trust? Is that what that is? Where
Well,
you,
trusts are always good, right? They are always protective.
yeah.
But the
But if
language,
you get Alzheimer's before you do it, it
it
you
doesn't
know
work.
it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
You have to deliver before.
Mm-hmm.
And funny, this is the same situation. Funny story was the seller presented me with a power of attorney that said, at my time of death or incapacitation, then my daughter would, be my power of attorney. So she sent that over to me. And so we asked for the letters from the two doctors that declared her incapacitated. The power of attorney was signed the same day the doctor signed the incapacitation.
So
So
okay.
so it's like, how can a person who's incapacitated sign a legal document? And it was notarized. So
Uh,
yeah, just that's probably our biggest hurdle, but we got past it. Past it by just being patient, explaining the reason for the delay in the closing, explaining to both buyer side and seller side, making sure that
mhm.
it wasn't something that wasn't going to get done and wasn't going to happen, but just to let all parties know,
Okay.
and then you work it out.
So I will tell you that when I first met you, the first thing I said to you is, if you don't create a relationship with my buyers or sellers from the get-go, you're out, you know?
Yep.
And I think that's what really every people need to. I try to encourage when it's not new construction, it, my buyers and sellers, they have to give a call and have it explained what you're going to do and how significant it is to get the answers, that to your questions. So I find that they don't understand what it is, and then they just think that it's all going to be handled, and it's not. You have to have a relationship with the title company up until the day of closing.
Absolutely. And we're asking personal information. So we want to develop that
Mhm.
one on one contact so that they know when they're giving us their social or they're giving us their, birth date or their credit card number or whatever it is, that they understand who we are, why we're asking for it, and, helping. We're really like your coordinator
Yeah.
as a title company. We're
Yeah.
going to help you coordinate the closing, get it to closing, and celebrate.
Well, what I find is, I do get a lot of cash deals, and I find that they just seem to want to shirk their responsibility and say, "Oh, we could do it we could just close, you don't have to come in." And I'm like, you know it's part of the joy of the celebration of closing, that you can get any questions answered right then and there, and not just sign this online and you're done, you know.
It's an
So
experience, right, to buy a home.
it
People are
is.
different though. So nowadays, you have people who are more technical and are, technology, and they want to just DocuSign or they
Yeah.
want to do a mail away or whatever. And that's fine too. But if somebody wants an experience, they should be allowed to come in and
I think they
experience
should. I
that.
think that you should
Absolutely.
you should go in anytime that you can get there. My first sale that I ever did was, that was a freaking nightmare. Again, my first broker, who I don't know why she told me to have everything signed in the office. Why they didn't go to the time, because I didn't know what the heck was going on. But she had them come into our office and sign, and I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
you know. And I'm like, since then, I'm like going, you know what? Give it to the title company. That's
Yeah.
their job anyway.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyway, so thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Susan Walker. I just got it. Isn't that the name of the character on Miracle from 34th? Okay.
Yes, it was.
I was in the first authorized stage production of Miracle on 34th Street.
Really?
Yes, I was. I played the irascible Dr. Sawyer. Oh, no, it was Mr. Sawyer. He's not a doctor.
Mr. Sawyer. Wow, that's good.
And you know who attended was Valentine, the writer's daughter.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, she said I was marvelous.
Marvelous. That's awesome.
That was my first and last stage production. So anyway, but I love that movie. So anyway.
I do too.
Yeah, it's the best. Anyway, so thank you so much for coming on. If anybody else has any questions, you could always email me. And I'll be glad to answer. I just am so glad I got a lot of answers to stuff that I've been thinking about with title. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm glad that I could be on with you tonight. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So guys, that was Susan Walker from Meets and Bounds. That is the title company that my new company Vision Home Real Estate is working with. That Vision Home Real Estate is my new broker. Let me see if I can. There we go. There's the logo. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching, everybody. And I will be live again on Sunday from an over 55 community. And thanks again. Okay. Making the dream of a Disney lifestyle a reality. I'm Victor Naraki. Contact me on Facebook at Naraki Realtor or my website, celebratingflorida.com. Thanks for watching Disney at your doorstep.